Hij laat op.
80.
Right, good morning. This is my last day of trying what a Nissan Leaf will have in common with a Tesla. I've exchanged cars with Vincent Evers, our trend watcher, who's totally committed to proving that driving an EV is an absolutely workable option in Holland. And I'm a happy owner of a Tesla since the last year. I've been driving my little Tesla for about 25,000 kilometers by now. And I must say I have had no problem whatsoever since, say, the first couple of days. Had to get used to it. Once that worked, we were totally happy with it. And now I am driving around with a big Nissan Leaf. So the request was to give some feedback on what the difference is. And to be quite honest, we are comparing apples and oranges completely. The only common denominator is that we have an electric car with the usual range anxiety issues that always occur. So that's the only thing you can do. Other than that, these cars are totally different. Starting from the outside, the Tesla is a stunning sports car that has been in the dryer a little bit too long, so it became a small sports car. The Nissan Leaf is probably one of the newer designs family cars with an atrocious set of headlights. Absolutely incredible. I don't know which designer made this, but they shouldn't send them back to school. They just have to give them a good whacking. These headlights are totally ridiculous. But if we look from the outside in, we see with the Tesla a very brutal sports car, very efficient, very small, quite comfortable though, despite the fact that there's so little comfort built into the car. But it doesn't need much because there's no engine noise, there's little other noises other than the usual wind noise, so that's quite good. If we then compare it to the Nissan Leaf, all of a sudden we're driving around in a limousine. It's a little bit smaller than the big 7 Series BMWs or the Audi A8s. But if you look at the effective room inside, it really is a limousine. And it's a lot quieter than these €100,000 cars that I just mentioned. So as a matter of fact, the Nissan Leaf can really pick up the ball against these big boys. It's a very, very good car. Driving is good, steering is good. It's not a flashy sports car, but nobody said it was, so we shouldn't be complaining about that. So the outside is so-so, the inside is excellent. I got some very good feedback from my daughters who said technically it's a very good car. It looks technical, but if you look away from the dashboard, you're looking at a very boring design. So if we kick out the whatever they are, American or Japanese designers who took care of the inside, and we replace them by some wild Italian, unorganized, chaotic idiot, then probably you get a very exciting design. We voted for chocolate brown metallic on the outside and an Alcantara creamish inside, and then preferably with some contrasting stitching. So that probably will give the car a tremendous upgrade, and all of a sudden it looks like a very classy car. What is the downside of this all? Well, I just got it off the hook, and literally after a full night of charging, and it says it's 100% charged, it says I would like to see another plug in 133 kilometers, which is fine because there's tons of plugs in this country. The disadvantage is you can't drive to all of them at the same time. So really the range anxiety in this car is an absolute stunning thing. It really keeps you busy all the time. Well, there is a solution to that. Yes, there is. It's called the eco mode. Well, If you don't want to suffer from Gilles de la Tourette all the time, don't use the eco mode, because it accelerates like a snail with broken legs. It is absolutely worthless. So don't even think about using eco mode. That is only if you have been drinking too heavily, have to go back anyway after a long day, and you decide to go back over the escape lanes, driving 40 kilometers an hour, trying to get back home, and then you can say to the policeman that you're driving so slowly because the car is empty. The real reason is you're just completely drunk. Other than that, don't even think about it, because your nerve system cannot stand it. Driving on the highway, is that workable? Absolutely it is. I took it for a spin on the A16. We're allowed to drive a little bit faster there, so we did, without any effort. It will boost from 0 to 160 like no effort is being given at all. It just happens. I was surprised by getting onto the highway, getting off the ramp, that all of a sudden I was doing 155. And I was expecting, given the experience from the outside, I was doing something like 100, 110. So reality tells me that this really is a very good silent car. The only real problem is the range anxiety. If you could bring the Tesla DNA in terms of range, because it will do about 320 kilometers, and the range of this car, which is really in reality about 130, if you can mix those DNAs and get some clones out of that little mix, you have a very, very useful car. Over the last week I've been driving with a variety of people, clients, staff, friends, and not everyone wanted to have an interview recorded with them, so we don't have the full picture, but the picture I got out of all those test drives is that it really is a very good car, and people are really excited. Even people driving about 100 kilometers single commuting distance will be considering this. So it is a good car. If you're really willing to calculate and you're willing to sacrifice in terms of your complete flexibility in terms of range, then this is an excellent car. Of course, the tax which has been waived on it, the BPM, the luxury tax, is a good step in the right direction. Apparently it's planned for the next 10 years, I believe, in Holland. Still, 10 years is, it's a nice step, but it still is a very expensive car. I would suggest take away the VAT on the car, or bring it to the lower rate of 6% rather than the 19%. For companies, the VAT doesn't hurt. For individuals, it does hurt. And this is typically a car that people will consider as a second car, alongside with the usual fuel engine car, which will give them unlimited range. So it would be a waste not to take that opportunity. We'll need to invest all together, the energy companies, the government, the public, the companies that are willing to drive lease cars in this category, will need to invest to make this a successful event. But it's worthwhile, because really this is a zero emission car. And if we are looking at greenhouse gas issues, then today this is one of the biggest issues. We can easily change that. And whether we're using atomic power coming out of our power plant in Borselen in Zeeland from the Delta company, or we're using solar power, or we're using other alternative sources of green electricity, that's a more public discussion that I don't want to get into now. But if we're using effectively green energy to feed cars like this, it's an absolutely very, very useful alternative for the good old fuel burning cars. Yes, I have been a petrol head for many years. Yes, I drove the most exotic, weird cars, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'm not regretting it. We didn't know that CO2 was a problem. The only thing we know today is that it is. So we can't ignore it, so we'll have to keep changing. If we're looking back, it's not going to help us. We should go to the museum. If we're looking forward, we're looking into reality. And reality is electric cars. Today, tomorrow, and probably for many years to follow. I've enjoyed it. My name is Koen Lockefeer. I run a company called Eclectic, which we're viewing right now on the camera. We're driving our Tesla and we'll continue driving it, but we're certainly very keen to see what the next steps are going to be, and hopefully our friends from Nissan will be able to get some more power into this car in terms of range, and then it will be an excellent alternative. Great experience, great fun, and it really gave us a lot of new contacts and new insight in what the reality is. The verdict. Is there a verdict between Tesla and Leaf? I would say there isn't. They're two excellent cars, both suffering to a certain extent from the same generic problem of range, but that in a way is not only the problem of the car makers, that is also a large problem of the electricity suppliers. If we would be willing to put as many charge points in the country as we have fuel stations, we would already be solving quite a bit of an issue. So it's not only to pinpoint the car makers and say you're doing things wrong, it's also a matter of thinking more actively. And let's be real, how easy is it to bring electricity into many locations in this country? It already is, versus to drive around with big trucks of 30-40 tons of highly flammable diesel and gasoline, and to pump it into big caverns and then to pump it into cars and having fumes all over the place. That is a very old-fashioned way of bringing energy around. We have an excellent electricity grid in Holland, and we can certainly use it for the better. So the only thing we need to do is, other than just the ordinary plugs in our total system, bring some plugs that cars will like to connect to, and we're going to be totally happy. That's it for now. I enjoyed it. Thank you, and bye-bye.